Crash the Party, Rick Drogo, episode 18. I'm still trying to find my way through this political landscape they call the United States of America. Congress. I'm sitting here, I'm watching videos, I'm reading news, I'm checking it all out. And today you're going to come with me we're going to see why there is a left wing and a right wing. We're going to watch a video by a man named Mr. Beat. Not quite Mr. Beast. I don't think so, but we'll find out. His name's Mr. Beat, and we're going to watch his video. I wanted to talk about the news today. I wanted to talk about all the stuff that's going on because there's, a war going on outside no man is safe from. But, so Trump's saying it's over, but he's going to start a new one, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking at the news over this weekend thinking about what I'm going to jump into and what I want to go over, and I'm like, man, this is all just the same stuff over and over again right now with Trump and all this. I can't get just stuck wrapped up in this Iran war and Trump all the time, even though it would appear that I could talk about it every day. I mean, first of all, the content keeps coming. Second of all, it's like a TV show. It's really ridiculous, all this stuff and the stuff he's saying. But I'm not going to get into that today, I don't think. We're going to watch this video. It's about 10 minutes long. And I got a big work week ahead of me, so I'm not sure how I'm going to shoot videos yet. I'm going to do my best to pull it off. I might do truck videos. I'm almost positive I'm going to do truck videos. I don't know how I'm going to do them, though. So we'll see. If it's absolutely terrible, then I will just post a little something showing you how terrible it is. And I'm going to make changes. I'm in the process of putting together a plan to make high-quality truck videos so that I can do stuff like this from my truck. But I'm going to need some stuff that I don't have, I think. I could make it work now, but I don't know if you're going to want to listen to it. I want to give the best quality I can. This mic, it was pretty cheap, but it sounds good to me. And if YouTube ever puts money in my pocket, then I'll take that money and I'll buy a better microphone. I'll buy a better camera. And that's how I feel about that. So, anyways, we'll jump right in. But I am willing to invest in the truck setup. We'll call it that. Because I love doing this. I'm having lots of fun, and I do have time. So, I got time today. So let's check out this guy, Mr. Beat. As you can see, he is Mr. Beat. I didn't lie. Let's check him out. And hopefully it's funny and entertaining. And if it's not, I might not say one word.
I'm Mr. Beat. Let's watch some people talk about politics, shall we?
Charlie Kirk and Candace Owens, the right-wing superstars, went on Fox News. And what they did is they spewed the most boring, banal, right-wing talking points I've ever heard.
They spin out hour after hour of slickly produced left-wing propaganda.
And those people have more or less systematically been ignored by people on both the right-hand side and the left-hand side of the political spectrum.
Yeah, on the right, conservatives, you're always talking about taxes and regulations and big government. And on the left, liberals, you're talking about economics. It's always about income inequality, right?
The divide between the left and the right is as bad as it's been in really any of our lifetimes.
You know what? I'm not quite sure that all of these people have the same definitions of the left and the right. What do people mean when they say left wing or right wing? Well, the whole political spectrum that gave us left versus right began during the French Revolution, not that long ago. For more about this, I'm going to send you to Mr. Barris from the channel This is Barris. He's going to get into the history of why we have these terms. Go ahead, Barris, yeah.
Thank you for having me over, Mr. Beat. To discover the origins of the left versus right paradigm, one must go as far as the French Revolution, with the creation of the National Constituent Assembly, whose main task was to draft a constitution. Now, while France is proudly Republican today, and any trace of royalty has long been guillotined away, that wasn't always the case, and a large portion of the population supported the king, or at least those who represented that population. As such, when on November 11, 1789, the Assembly had to vote on whether the Constitution would grant the king an absolute veto or partial veto. Those who favored an absolute veto were asked to sit on the right of the President of the Assembly, while those who favored a partial veto, which was the more radical position, were asked to sit on the left. This wasn't done symbolically, but to make the vote count easier for the president, who felt a bit overwhelmed by the 1,500 deputies. And just like that, France started this idea of change versus tradition, of liberalism versus conservatism, which still shapes the political landscape to this day. In the following months, the deputies will maintain that distinction, not out of ideology, but rather necessity, as the Baron de Gauville explained. We begin to recognize each other. Those who were loyal to religion and the king took up positions to the right of the chair, so as to avoid the shouts, oaths, and indecencies that enjoyed free reign in the opposing camp. Furthermore, being on the same side of the political spectrum by no means meant that you shared the same ideologies. It is often forgotten that the French Revolution started as a bourgeois revolution. The bourgeois were somewhat Republican and thus considered left-wing. However, most bourgeois also supported free market reforms and liberalism in the classical sense. And when you have proto-communists like Cassius Babeuf, who were also considered left-wing because, well, the alternative meant support of the king, you get why this might be problematic, right? It would take another century before the left versus right spectrum became popular outside of France. In the beginning of the 20th century, as revolutions sprouted across the world, the press and academics needed a quick way to categorize the different ideologies that were fighting each other, especially as these ideologies, both left and right, became increasingly radical. For example, the Bolsheviks, who loved anything related to the French Revolution, immediately embraced the left-wing versus right-wing spectrum, although they considered themselves the centrist position. In England, however, the political spectrum took longer to become widespread, and books only started referencing it in the late 1920s. Adoption in the US was just as slow, but eventually, as partisanship increased in the 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement, the idea of a left versus right political spectrum cemented along the beliefs of both parties. And that's it, Mr. Beat. That's the story of how an overwhelmed president who needed an easier way to count his deputies ended up creating a system which now allows millennials to dismiss their uncle as a racist right-wing boomer, while he dismisses them for being triggered left-wing snowflakes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Barris. What about today? Well, often the political spectrum looks something like this. On the left side of politics, you tend to see ideas like liberty, equality, aka egalitarianism, progress, and internationalism. On the right side of politics, you tend to see ideas like authority, hierarchy, tradition, and nationalism. On the left, you often see reform, while on the right, you often see reaction. Those on the left tend to want more government involvement to make society better. They want it more top-down, while those on the right tend to want less government involvement to make society better. They want it bottom-up. Ideas on the left are often called, quote, liberal, and ideas on the right are often called, quote, conservative. Of course, these generalizations are incredibly misleading, which is why this political spectrum is pretty much crap. I mean, rarely do folks fit neatly on one side or the other. For example, a person might think the government generally screws everything up when it gets too involved, yet absolutely hates nationalism or hierarchy. Often folks find themselves caught up with this weird label called, quote, centrism, because they fall somewhere in between. However, most people fall, quote, in between on most issues. Hey, can we get a better political spectrum up in here, please? Thanks. Okay, what's this one? Oh yes, this one was developed in the 1950s by a psychologist named Hans Eysenck. He noticed that there was something similar going on with the Nazis, who were supposed to be on the right end of the spectrum, and communist dictators, who were supposed to be on the left end of the spectrum. So he came up with these two spectrums, an R factor representing radicalism and a T factor representing tender-mindedness. Needless to say, Eysenck's diagram had its critics. In particular, this dude, another psychologist named Milton Rokeach, who argued the big difference between the left and right was basically that the left stressed equality more. Needless to say, Eysenck later adapted his chart to look like this, bringing an S-factor spectrum, which followed economic beliefs. Around that same time, the Nolan chart, developed by a libertarian activist named David Nolan, became a handy way for people to quickly see where they fell politically by looking at a personal freedom spectrum and an economic freedom spectrum. Yep, that's about where Nolan would have been on his own chart. And yes, today it's still heavily used in libertarian circles. The Vossum chart was a 3-axis version of the Nolan chart and looks like this. Whoa, that one looks complicated. Other 2-axis charts include the Pornell chart, developed by this dude, Jerry Pornell. On one axis, it looks at people's attitudes toward the government, or as he said, the state. On the other, people's attitudes toward social progress. But wait a second, how do you define social progress, though? Over the years, there have been tons of political spectrum charts, like this one, and more 3-axis versions like this one. But the problem is, people won't stop fighting about which chart is best. Most of the debate centers over which axis or axes to include for each one. Wait a second. The plural of axis is axes? What the heck? Anyway, additional axes include communitarianism versus individualism, no separation of church and state versus complete separation of church and state, interventionist foreign policy versus non-interventionist foreign policy, multilateralism versus unilateralism, globalization versus protectionism, pacifism versus militarism, and centralism versus regionalism. That's a lot of isms. Again, odds are almost all of you are somewhere in the middle on all of these spectrums. So where do you fall on the political spectrum? That's right, you, with the yellow shirt. Well, I think it depends on the issue. It's not static. Chances are you are constantly moving around on the spectrum, and that's probably a good thing because it shows that you have a more open mind. If you want to know where you stand at any given time, I personally recommend the Political Compass. It's not perfect, but it's a pretty good start figuring out where you stand politically. There is also isidewith.com, which does a decent job of matching you up with politicians you should probably vote for, but calling someone or yourself right-wing or left-wing, which really didn't start happening frequently in the United States until the 1920s, by the way, is almost always an oversimplification. Whenever someone says the left or the right or left-wing or right-wing, ask them what they mean when they say that. Chances are you ask different people, they'll give you different answers. I think those terms, left and right, can do more harm than good, and probably it's time to get rid of them. Well, what do you think, Mr. Barris?
Yeah, let's get rid of them. Because unless you are a filthy royalist, we are all technically left-wing here. And you aren't a royalist, Mr. Beat, right?
Well, at this point, left-wing and right-wing just mean Democrat or Republican. So I don't really see any harm in using the phrases. It's not like they mean what they meant, obviously, when they were created. So what's the big deal?
Right?
Okay then. And thanks for helping me make this video, Mr. Barris. Be sure to check out Mr. Barris's channel, This Is Barris. It's exclusively about...
All right, well, another video about the political spectrum. And it's just hard for me to retain all that information. But it's good for me. I need to hear it. And I am going to keep watching them. I've watched these on my own time, too. And, man, I'd be like... knowing that I got a camera on me helps me focus a little bit better. So I'm going to try the Political Compass and probably istandwith.com. I might do those tomorrow on my own time and see where I land. I don't see myself picking a side anytime soon or even really identifying with where I stand because I don't understand what so much of it means still. I just know what I see on the news today. I can speak on that to what I think. And so, and it doesn't look good. They got Project Freedom going on, which Trump says we're going to help guide ships out of the restricted waterways. And I don't know if being on the right or left, I wonder, I should say, if more people on the right are for that or against it versus the left. That'd be interesting. I wish I could get a poll up. But I don't really have that much of an audience, so yeah, that would be interesting to see, though. A lot of the stuff that's going on nowadays, it's like the guy said, you're probably in the middle a lot. And from what I'm seeing, a lot of people just aren't really happy with where things are going right now. So, but that's another story for another day. And that's it for today. I'm glad I was able to get this video out, and I hope you learned as much as I did about the left and the right, that they don't mean what they mean now, but it doesn't really matter because they're just labels now. So what the heck? All right. Thank you so much for crashing the party with me. If you got any more ideas for me or videos to watch, shoot them my way so we can check them out together, because we going to do this together. All right. Thank you so much for stopping by.